What's up, geniuses? Welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Rob Markman. Now, HBO's Lovecraft Country follows the story of Atticus Freeman as he searches for his missing father and uncovers the supernatural forces that exist in the world. The series, which is set in the 1950s, explores the duality between the horrors of racism and the horrors of literal monsters. It's visually incredible. It's just an amazing series to watch. But here at Genius, we're all about the music. So we wanted to dive into the creativity behind the show's score and the amazing team behind the series, how they were able to record during the pandemic, and ultimately just bring this thing to life, okay? Today we have Lovecraft Country composers, the legendary Raphael Saadiq, and the legendary Laura Karpman. They're all here to tell us about it. Welcome to For the Record. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
No problem. It's really my pleasure. It's an honor for me. Let's just get into it, right? Lovecraft is based off of Matt Ruff's 2016 novel, and part of the excitement of watching our favorite books come to life is definitely the visual component. We read things and we see it in our head, and you imagine what it looks like, and then to see it on screen is pretty exciting. But the sonic elements that are used to bring the written word to life are crucial as well. So I just want to throw this out to both of you. When the idea for HBO's Lovecraft Country came to you both, what did you just initially hear in your heads? Like, what were the first sonic ideas that you guys came up with?
Misha Green, the showrunner, is a huge music lover. And for her, music and image are really bound together. They're really a part of her storytelling. So she puts a lot of music ideas in the script, and then Ray, we had that first talk with her where she said, "Yeah, I want gothic R&B, so like orchestral R&B." And I don't know, it's funny because in some ways it's that, in some ways it's not that. But she's just somebody who comes at something with tons of ideas and very specific ideas. So I think I read the book. And the series is like the book and departs from the book, but it definitely creates a world that's familiar and a world that's unfamiliar. So I think that definitely playing with some of those elements was something that we talked about and, figuring out how to do.
Right. Since the beginning of your career, you've been somebody who has pushed the boundaries of what R&B music is, and starting in the early 90s when you did, with Tony, the sound. And as it grew, I feel like you've dabbled in everything. Gothic R&B sounds like a whole new term to me that I don't even know what that sounds like. When you hear that term, did the light bulb go off? Were you like, Misha, what the hell are you talking about?
No, I kind of understood it. Even from my earlier first records, I think I started, just playing with analog keyboards and playing string parts that felt like it was kind of scary from Little Walter, like da 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 da. It was so when she said it, I kind of knew what she meant, but having Laura as a partner, I'm not going to run from anything, and she's definitely not going to run from anything. We've done stuff before, and somebody told us to do something like Jay Dilla, and I left the room and came back, and Laura was making Jay Dilla beats. So we're just a team of people that's always going to, welcome that challenge. And when Misha throws out something like R&B orchestra, me and Laura's going to look at each other and run back to the studio and try to make that happen. And, when you watching something and you hear, and you see all these different elements, even I guess in the beginning, we didn't really see the monsters, right? We didn't see all the animation, but we just kind of went back and said, let's do what we do. And, I'm just fortunate to have a partner like somebody who's any challenge, she's ready for it. And that's me. That's my thing. That's what I do.
It's funny. You mentioned Jay Dilla, and one of just the greatest producers of our time. I'm a hip hop baby, so but even his influence transcends that. But again, Gothic R&B, and this for Laura and you, Ray, as well. Were there any artists that you drew influence from, or did it feel like creating something from scratch without maybe a reference that somebody else had done before, but just coming from your head?
Well, there are two things. First of all, when I heard that, I thought of Sinner's Prayer, which was on Ray's latest album, and I had done some strings for, because that, that is dark and has these orchestral sounds in it, and really was a direction. And then he sent me, because of course this whole pandemic has changed everything in terms of collaborations, but he sent me a track. He just said, this is an idea I have, right? And I had written something for the last cue for the Artem theme, basically.
Right.
I threw it out. I said, oh my God, this is perfect. And it's one of the iconic themes of the series. And basically I took what he had given me, which is kind of like Twilight Zone meets, I don't know, meets Raphael Saadiq. I don't know, some weird other space. And then I put like an actual very classical orchestration on top of it. It kind of had a feeling of kind of like some of the 60s string work, but really more kind of 18th century classical. And that was, I think realized the vision, of this real synergy between, popular music and Raphael's sound and what I do, and the two really melded together. And they're kind of these two parts of the theme. One is this kind of da dee 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 doo dee or dee 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 dee, which is a guitar line, and there's a bass line that goes do dee 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 do, right? The tritone do dee. Right? And in classical music, that interval is called the devil's interval. So taking those two elements, which are counterpoint, and then laying stuff on top of them, that one theme informed a ton of stuff in the whole series. I could use the guitar. We could use the bass. All of us took us back to that creepy place, which is Artem, which, is one of the major forces in the series.
That's dope. I want to take it back a little bit just for people to understand it. And really on this show, we mostly talk to artists about their recorded music in terms of albums, singles. Now, the idea of scoring music for a television show may be foreign to a lot of fans and different, even though it comes probably from the same place in the soul and in the heart. Is just manifesting in a different way. So can you just, almost in layman terms, Laura, and then Raphael, just describe your title and your role of what exactly you did for the show?
Okay, well, first of all, the thing about Lovecraft that I think makes it distinct is that it's 10 movies. Like every episode is a movie. I wish it were a television show. I wouldn't be like on the ground, totally exhausted. It's really 10 movies. So what happens with film scoring, which I've done, it's been my kind of main gig for my life, is that basically you meet with a person in charge, a showrunner, a director, the creative sort of force, and you talk to that person like we did with Misha and kind of come up with a general idea of the style of music, what it should sound like. Generally, people are hired by what they bring to the table. I think in our case, obviously Raphael is Raphael, and I'm me, but I bring a lot of kind of orchestral music and a lot of diversity, being that I've worked in this field for a long time, and I get the different stylistic things. So then you sit down with that person and you spot the film, which means you look at literally where music starts and stops. That sounds boring, but it's the most important meeting that you have. Because where music starts and how it finishes is what gives you the entire emotional life of a score. So, for example, if you have a character and you want to explore an inner feeling of that character that's not completely obvious, a pain that might be there but needs to be exploded, that's a perfect opportunity for music. Or in the case of Artem, it's a place that has a personality. So sometimes it can be a place. And so literally you create a theme for that place, or you create a theme for a family or a character or for love or for anything that just needs to be explored, exploded. It just depends on the show. And so those spotting sessions are really, really important. Then, whether on your own or working with somebody else, you get together, you talk about it, you go back and forth, you create music, then you send it on for approval. In the olden days, pre-pandemic, someone might come to the studio and sit down with you and you listen together. And then if there's something that bugs them, you mute it. But it's collaborative art. Sometimes things fly and sometimes they don't. And that's part of being a grown-up, is you gotta just take the notes and use those notes to make it better, or to change it, or to start all over. And then once you get approvals, it goes to the dubbing stage, where everything's put together. So like in film, a lot of stuff is done in post-production. Ray said, we didn't, like many monsters I haven't even seen yet, because the visual effects always follow behind. But, they'll also put in all kinds of sounds. If you don't understand a line, the actors will loop that line or create it, or they'll create crowd sounds. And so all of these kinds of things are done in post-production. Then those are finally put together with the music, and then the show is ready to be shipped and aired.
That's great, and that's a great explanation. And because I really want the audience to understand, I think a lot of people who come to Genius get inspired by our different series, like Deconstructed, which might show how to make a hit record with a producer in the studio. And I think it's important for these young musicians to know that there's other avenues to explore your creativity than just recorded music, or even just the major label system and the process of making a single and making an album and stuff like that. Raphael, as somebody who has done both and more, recorded classics, like, first of all, I just got to say, Instant Vintage is one of my favorite albums of all time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Amazing album. And you've done work obviously in TV and film before. What is it like for you recorded music versus scoring? Does it come from the same place? Is the approach different? Like how do you make sense of all that in your head?
For me, the approach is a little different, because it's an exercise where you have to be a grown up. So the very second you jump in the room, it's a different schedule. Sometimes people want a pink elephant on a Sunday, and you have to turn it in. And like Laura says, sometimes people might not like what you do. They might, it's not that they might not like it. They might have a different choice, and you have to go back to the drawing board, and you have to go back to the drawing board a lot and figure things out. So I think it's a little different, but it's definitely a natural progression for someone like myself, because, musicians in orchestral world is, to me, is like the top. In jazz and orchestral world is always the top. I've always loved orchestra, strings, and films, and TV. They need that. So, like in film, we like to say, when you watch a scary movie and you see the doors close and somebody's about to come in and, break in your house and kill you, the thing is, can't you hear the music? Close the window. Something's about to happen. And so for me to get the opportunity to tell people, to close the window, or the music is someone's voice. So we have to make the music someone's, it's the actual line that's come out of their mouth. So sometimes we speak for the actors and actresses. So it's a lot different. And in music and writing songs, I have to speak for myself and also speak for an audience that's going to receive the music on radio, and make sure that I'm not whack, and make sure that you like it, or you give me that time in your life to occupy those 3 minutes. And in TV and episodic TV shows, you have to make people not get bored of a scene which we think is really great. My problem is with these shows like Lovecraft, Country is so good, I forget that I have a job, and I end up sitting in front of the computer watching it like this, and then I forget, you actually have to work, and that's the difference for me.
Right. It really is a great show, and when you think about it, the musical experience and watching film and television sometimes is very subliminal. Sometimes the audience doesn't even notice or can't pinpoint what it is, but it's really the music driving that a lot of that emotion, or the buildup, or helps you navigate what to expect based off of a mood that's happening musically. A very important job, a very like amazing art that I'm glad we're having this conversation. Laura, you had referenced, obviously you guys got to work. Like Raphael said, it is a job, it is work, and but then the pandemic came, like everything else, like everybody else, it just kind of changed everything. What was going through your mind when you both realized that maybe you couldn't get together and record the way that you traditionally would, or talk and exchange ideas? What was that process like? How did the pandemic change things for your creative process?
Well, it was so weird because the last time I really went out was for Raphael's concert, the last concert of his tour, which was February 28th. I remember because my birthday is March 1st. And so it was kind of like, the birthday present. And then we had our first spotting session, I think on the 2nd, right around that time. And I remember I started feeling funny about going out of the house, and I couldn't quite, like, everything was such a mess, and things were really happening more in Europe, less so in New York, but I had this feeling that things were really going downhill. And I shut down my schedule that week. Like, I had a screening of something I was supposed to go to. I was supposed to go teach in San Francisco, and I canceled everything. And we were supposed to get together that week, and I think both of us were like, we kept sort of canceling and postponing. I mean, it was weird because I don't know how much you guys remember that time, but like nobody knew what was going on, and you just were going by, I mean, as we still are in many ways, going by instinct. But I think about 2 weeks after we had sort of spotted that episode, I started realizing that we were not going to get together. And Raphael and I are comfortable trading files back and forth. I mean, I love our work when we sit in the same room together, and we did a lot on Underground, and there's something so incredible about that, and it can't be matched. But there are also times, due to schedule, due to where everybody is, and he goes out on tour and does his thing, that we do work remotely. So working remotely for the two of us was not really a problem. But we did have a problem in that Misha Green wanted a big-ass orchestra. Am I allowed to say that?
Go ahead.
You said it already.
Big-ass orchestra.
What better way?
Big-ass orchestra.
What better way to describe
it? Big-ass orchestra for Lovecraft Country. I mean, also when we talked about film scoring, there's a temporary score that's put on the film that helps inform, mostly, I mean, the music too, but the directors, the producers, studio execs about what's working and what's not working and what's going on stylistically. Well, she had big-ass orchestral music in that thing. And so I started thinking, what in God's name are we going to do about this? And then I thought, let's make an orchestra. And there's a very, very, very brilliant engineer that Raphael and I worked with on Black Nativity, that Casey Lemons directed. His name's Brad Hanel. I called up Brad. And I said, what if we were to record everybody in their living rooms? How could we do it? And I said, my biggest concern is string sound, right? Because other things like brass, all of that, you can make an easier blend, but because they're basically individual instruments, except for the horns, we have 4 horns. But how are you going to get that string sound that doesn't sound like just 6 or 8 people, violins playing? And so we really worked together and developed a system. And what we did is we sort of identified wonderful musicians and then placed them in their bedrooms. So like, for example, you see where I am, and if I were a violinist and I were sitting in a studio, the mic might be there, right? So let's say I'm first violin, the second violin, it might be there, behind me. So we basically placed people in their bedrooms, living rooms, wherever it was that they were going to be recording, and taught them how to use Pro Tools, how to record, how to make it happen. And we sent out a test cue, which was the family theme, which you actually hear in episode 1. And you hear that first time that the family theme occurs when Atticus is coming through the window. was the very first cue that we recorded in March that was our test cue. And it sounded great. I mean, you couldn't tell. And so then we started recording, and there are certain things in the score that I thought are going to be really hard to pull off. And what in classical music we call it aleatoric music, but chance music. And when you hear that, like lots of stuff happening at the same time, and it sounds like a wall of sound. That stuff, when you're conducting a group, you go like this to the strings. They have this thing notated, then you cut them off, right? But when you got people sitting in their living rooms with no conductor, how are you going to do that? And so I worked with a really, really capable orchestrator, and we figured out how to really communicate that in music notation to the players. And it just worked. We just got super lucky, and it all worked. And the other thing that happened, which I really would love to say was totally by design, because then I would fit into the genius thing that you guys have got going there.
You're a genius.
But,
you're
I don't know about that. Maybe I'll just claim it. Hey, this was my idea. But no, it didn't really happen. So the show takes place in 1955, right? And, this kind of gothic aesthetic is not only, 18th and 19th century, but it's also kind of mid 20th century. So if you think about film scores from that time, like The Day the Earth Stood Still, The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is Bernard Herrmann, or Jerry Goldsmith, Planet of the Apes, and those kinds of scores, they use a lot of the same techniques that we used in Lovecraft. And what was so radical, which I didn't expect, is because we were recording everybody close mic'd, it sounded like music of that time, right? So that it was this wacky thing that it wasn't really by design, but it fits in perfectly with the show. And honestly, if there's a second season, I'm knocking on every possible piece of wood. I still will record this way, because I think it gives the show a unique sound that's special and differentiates it.
Wow. So listen, because I'm a firm believer in with this pandemic, I don't think we're going back to normal. I think our normal is going to change. Anybody waiting for things to get back to quote unquote normal is probably fooling themselves.
Welcome to the 21st century. That's what I keep saying. Yeah. This is it.
But you're saying, go ahead.
I think what we figured out through the whole pandemic is some things we don't need.
Yeah.
But there's nothing's never going to replace a room full of players in one room. Right. That can never be replaced. But what we did figure out through this is we don't need a conductor. We all don't need to be in the same room. And we don't need to drive from North Hollywood to Santa Monica for a meeting in the worst traffic in LA.
Strike that off. The next contract is going to be way different. I'm not going to X that. So, but it's interesting though, but because you're saying there will be a time when we're able to be together as collaborators. But Laura, you're saying for season 2, I saw you knock on wood. I firmly believe that season 2 is coming. We're going to speak it all the way to its existence. You'd record it the same way, even if we were able to kind of all be together and do it the traditional way.
We have musicians playing on the score that are with the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. We have musicians from Baltimore Symphony, Chicago Symphony, Toronto Symphony, Vancouver Symphony, as well as LA studio people. We have people that I've wanted to collaborate with who live all over the world. And it's incredible. And they're putting their hearts and souls into this. And it's really, I would do it this way because basically we have, and it's not that we have the best musicians in the world in LA, but there are also great musicians other places. So that is a very cool thing too, that we're able to work with different people in different places and see what they bring to the table that it normally on a scoring date we wouldn't do. So it's very, very cool in that way. And like I said, I think that we have the sound. The sound is so unique, and I like it. I think it's cool, and I think it works for the show. So why go to something else when it works? I mean, it's a lot of work, but it works, you know?
Yeah, and as the audience, we don't notice it. We don't know how the cake is made, you know what I'm saying? So no, that's dope. Um, being as how Raphael, this is for you. Lovecraft, is set in the 50s, right? How different is it
Yeah.
from scoring a show like Insecure, which you've also worked on, which is modern day? Like, just kind of talk about those differences. Also, an HBO show which we love, is actually an amazing show.
Right.
The creative differences that go into there when you're talking about a period piece and something modern day.
Well, it's totally different because Lovecraft Country is basically like Laura said, it's built around the 50s. It's big horror strings. There's so many. It's jazz. It's it's sci-fi. James Baldwin just breaks out in the middle of a piece. So you have so many different things to think about when you hear James Baldwin. And when I heard James Baldwin's voice, it just made me feel like, okay, I really have to step up, my work. But with Insecure, it's a little different too. It's a little different type of freedom, which I really love. Because Issa Rae is, sort of and Kira Lemon, they sort of like picking the needle drop music, and it's more West Coast hip hop with a little bit of East Coast hip hop. And so I get a lot of chance to like make beats, and I get to make records. I sing. Sometimes I'll make about 5 records in each episode. So people are getting random tracks from me. So, Insecure is it's a lot of work. It's not easy, because Issa Rae will be sometime, we can do one better than that. And then I'll have to make a record that's similar to that. So it's different. It's different in that way. But, Misha and Issa Rae is have some small things that remind me of each other. It's the way we sit in spotting dates. If spotting dates, which Laura was talking about, when you sit in the room and watch each episode, I can see like the intensity of both Misha and Issa Rae, how I see some similar things, which makes you be in these meetings and run out the room and figure it out. What can you do to make this more impactful for the viewers and for myself and for the show?
That's amazing. That must be an incredible challenge. I can't imagine. Look, I'm a fan. We seen the finished product. I can't imagine somebody telling Raphael Saadiq you could do that better.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I think it's the best thing ever for me. Even though I'm an artist, I always wanted to be a person that was a utility guy who can work in every capacity. Once I got into the music industry, I just said I wanted to be that person on the basketball court where don't leave me alone with the ball, because I'm gonna make the shot. So I didn't want to be in the music industry and say I can't score, I can't write for another artist, I can't produce, because be honest, to be in this business, to make money, you got to be able to do everything. You just can't be a person that sings, because now nobody can go on tour, and I could stay at home and do film and TV. And when tours open back up, I can do that. And when somebody wants to do a track, I can produce. And I just love everything about music. And I just think the whole, dealing with different shows, and even like with Laura, I call Laura the professor because, she taught at Juilliard's, and I didn't get a chance to go to Juilliard's, and some great musicians from the Juilliard's in Berkeley. I didn't do any of that. Right at 18, I was on tour with Sheila and Prince. I was gone. There was no going to school for college for music. My college was in Oakland, East Oakland, where I played in every club, every church, everything. So me preparing myself to score, and the first person I actually worked with was John Singleton is the person who got me into scoring, because he said, "Oh, you should score, man. You should score." But I felt at that time I was too young to score. I felt like I needed to be a little older, get a little bit more seasoned. And then when I really started scoring, the first person I scored with was Miss Karpman, Laura Karpman, and Dr. Laura Karpman, big Mercedes Benz, big Oscars. She's an Oscar. What do you do for the Oscars?
Oh, I'm a governor at the Academy.
Governor of the Academy. This is my professor. So I get to be next to her, and her lovely wife, Nora, is like my heart. So with those people around me, it's like it's the best position for me to be in the beginning when I start really scoring, I like to say.
You know, it's funny. Two things I want to say. First of all, Raphael calls me his professor, but he's really mine, because I've learned so much from him after spending a lifetime in music and studying and doing all those things. Because, I mean, Raphael is such a unique artist, but he does things in a very specific way. And for me to work with him, I've had to break down and understand how he does things from kind of an analytical standpoint, just because that's the way I work. And the guy's off the chain brilliant. And what his, like, working with him and his sense of timing, and also his sense of making an instrument sing, like really creating through playing, has been like really wildly educational for me. I've learned a lot in the years that we've been working together. You know, the other thing I wanted to say is, I think what's really important to know about scoring in general is when you're working with smart people like Misha Green, when she tells you to do something again, it's because you need to do it again. It's not because it's not good. It's because it's not working for her in the project that she knows way better than you do. It doesn't matter how many times you look at it, or you read the book, you read the script, whatever. She knows, she wrote it, she conceived of it, it's her. It's like Raphael makes an album, he knows that album. You know, people who come in and work on it work through his vision, right? And through his authorship. And that's what happens when you work with Amisha. And I'm sure it's the same thing with Insecure. You know, where you're working with these incredible people who have a real vision of what their work is. And it's your job to augment that. And so when they ask you to do something, when they're good, I have no problem with it. I have no problem with one note that I've ever gotten from Misha. Not one.
That's amazing. I want to go back as we start to wind down against the series a little bit, because we talked about, obviously each character has their own story, each character has their own place and their own mood. So when we talk about Lovecraft, how do you take that in consideration? Let's say for scoring scenes like with Atticus versus scenes with Letty versus scenes with Christina Braithwaite, like there's a different mindset, there's a different mood that goes into each one, right?
Right, there is. I mean, I think, first of all, there are all these like themes that basically we've just been finishing up episode 10 where all the themes come smashing together. But you've got the family theme, right? We talked about the Artem theme. There's a kind of a part of the family theme that's a little bit darker for the family secrets. The Artem theme works for Christina. There are multiple kind of hero themes that emerge. There's a Diana and Hippolyta theme that then gets exploded as their story gets exploded. There's a Ruby and William sound that Raphael created on like fabulous kind of guitar stuff that we reversed and made all weird, that comes up in further episodes. And they're you know, so there are all these themes that emerge. You know, the show. I think one of the really cool things about the show is different people emerge as heroes at various times, and that's been interesting to play with. Just like, who's the hero, who's the villain, who's the monster, what monsters are the scariest monsters? How do you get scarier than scary? You know, and so there are these kind of themes that carry through. It's and also just sometimes just plain old scary music that's just a boo.
How do you deal with that? That's great. And when we talk about the different forms of being scared, the different forms of terror, like in watching this, and especially where we are right now in the world, the scariest part seems to be the very real dangers that we see out on windows, that we see every time in our communities, every time we turn on the news. In episode 1, there was a really intense couple of scenes, you know, that first starts with Tick and Letty and George when they're in the diner, and then they realize that they have to flee. And you know, that's backed by like, and they jump in the car and there's just intense drums and you know, then our heroes are run out of town by sundown by a racist sheriff, and just the score just booms in the background. How do you create suspense in those type of tense moments of very real racial conflicts where the monsters aren't so sci-fi or ghostly, but right in your face, like clear present danger. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm going to let Ray talk about that. But one thing that I can tell you that I asked him for, I said, I want you to go to your drum set and play a crazy drum solo. And Raphael's actually a great drummer, and he's like the way that he plays drums. Nobody else plays drums like that, right? Like it's. Yeah. I've worked with Questlove. I've worked with lots of people. Like Ray has a thing on the drums that's. So I said, just play something. He said, I'll bring my guy, and I said, don't bring your guy, and just play like a crazy ass drum solo. That is. I think that drum solo is my absolute favorite thing in episode 1, and that's the first time you hear it. Is in that chase scene. And so, that scene went through a lot of revisions where it started out kind of, the temp was electronic. So I asked Ray to give me some drum tracks and some analog, really cool stuff that he makes on his stuff. And then, but when it gets crazy, do you remember that? When the drums kick in, that to me is like crazy, crazy, crazy. I love that moment. And then, Misha wanted orchestra added. It was one of those things where after the end was scored, and we talked a lot, like this was a spotting session that we actually did in person. We talked a lot about the sheriff and those monsters versus the Shoggoths that happened later. And she never gave us an answer as to who was supposed to be scarier or different. But after we scored the end, we came back and we added orchestra into that chase scene when it really amps up.
Raphael, can you speak to that, man? Because look, there's we're watching this on HBO. There is obviously an entertainment factor that goes into it. We watch TV to be entertained. What is great about this show is the remarks and the message that it has and how it just really relates to where we've been in America and where we still presently are. Like it's inescapable. Can you just talk about your experience, especially scoring those scenes?
Yeah, well, it's very dark times. Listen to my mom who just turned 88. August 1st, and my mother's from Louisiana. She's from the South. So listening to her, my mother don't like to talk about it much, but my father passed away some years ago, and I should talk to him a little bit about it. But just growing up in Oakland and living a pretty easy life, I would say, in Oakland, listening to what happened in the 50s and the 60s, and growing up in the neighborhood where the Black Panthers was at, and me being able to get to eat the free lunch and the free lunch program from the Panthers, and to see what's happening right now with Rihanna and everything that's going on. It's scary in our own neighborhoods, and I live in Portland, Oregon now. I moved up there right during the pandemic. Like Laura got in her car and jetted off to Vancouver. I sort of got in my truck and jetted off in the middle of the night to Oregon just to be by myself for a minute. And so I was scoring from tour and also in Oregon, in Portland. And so when we're making scary music without knowing, we're probably really have some fear in our own lives. Because I would talk to Laura, not thinking she was going to be I think Laura was a little bit more nervous than I was. I didn't know that. When I moved, she said, Ray, you did a good thing. And I was like, whoa. And then she ended up moving. So while we're making this, I just think that, we don't even know where we're at today. Everything is a little scary. And I just think as a black man, I think for some reason, I'm not as scared. It feels pretty much the norm for me. I've had to escape a lot of different things. So, and also in scoring films like Lovecraft Country, it's pretty light compared to scoring underground. There was a scene in Underground that I scored, and Laura's like, it's the scene you have to score, And she's looking down like, I know what he's about to say. And I was like, I don't see this scene. She said, no, just keep watching it. And it's these guys like, 10 governors, and they're trying to teach this guy to be how to become the mayor or the governor of his city. And this black guy, was just hanging while they were having a meeting. And I had to score it. And that's when I noticed, like, wow, this is going to be hard. So Lovecraft Country is a little, it's not as bad as Underground was for me. It's just, it is scary, like watching the car drive. You have to be out of this town in 3 seconds or else we're going to kill you. Those kind of scenes, make
but they got out.
Yes,
they
got out.
Yeah. And
in Underground, that guy didn't get out.
That guy didn't get out,
know?
so it's a little better.
Yeah.
So when you read the book of Lovecraft Country and you read it, it's a little different from watching the car, the intensity of the car. So with the music, the drums and orchestral stuff over the top of it, I honestly forgot that I did it because I'm just sitting there hoping that the car gets away.
Wow. But that's great art, right? Like, that's great. Like, when you could, because like I said earlier, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but it's such a great point. When we watch, we almost forget everything that goes in it as the audience because you're so wrapped up in it. So you might not hear the intensity of the drums the same way, or the look on the actor or actress's face, right? It just all hits you at once and you feel it. For you to be a creator and an artist and somebody who contributed to this, and to say that even you watching it kind of forgot what went into it and you're just swept up and caught up into it, really speaks about the power of the finished product, right?
Yeah, and I'm just that kind of person anyway, and Laura's different from me. Laura could watch a show. She could watch a show that we did 10 years ago, and Laura will pick out the scene and name everybody in it. I'm the type of guy that like to empty my hard drive. I'm always in my head, so I don't like things to stay in my head. So when I'm watching it, I'm like, wow, this is a great show. This is great music. The orchestra sounds good. The actors are great. And I'm glad that it's, to see that the music and all the great actors in it, that it's matching with the production of the film. But, so that's a plus for me. I love that part of it. And also love to see the HBO sound goes, shh. And
that feels good, actually. That feels good.
Yeah,
that feels good. That feels good.
Real quick, for my own selfish needs, because I'm a fan of this song, Raphael, you moving to Portland, is that why you hooked up with Dame Lillard to do Goat Spirit? Because I love that song. I know both of you guys are Oaktown. I know both of you guys are from the town, and now you're in Portland. Was that the connection?
No, actually, my best friend is Brian Grant, who used to play for the Portland Trailblazers back in the day. So I've been going up there for years. And also, Dame Lillard, his mother and father, when I was a youngster, his father lives 1 block from where I grew up at. So his dad, and his father used to be, I was, a little skinny kid. His father used to take up for me when I was a little kid. So when I didn't know that was his son, and I went to this party and Dame was there, and Dame said, "Hey man, my dad? My dad's Houston. My dad said he used to take up for you when he was a little kid." And I'm like, "What? Who's your dad?" And so yeah, I went to school with his mother and father through junior high and high school.
Right.
And so that's how me and Damien got really cool.
That's a dope record, man. I appreciate it.
Man, thank you. I appreciate it.
Nah, you got it. And Laura, I don't know. I know this. I'm gonna go back. I meant to joke on you a little bit because you had brought up Questlove and you had brought up Raphael, and I'm like, are you trying to set up the next versus battle? Is this the pregame?
Not on purpose, but you know what? I'll probably stumble into it somehow, knowing me. Make some stupid mistake and start some sort of drum war, But
that's
what I do.
This is how that drum war would go. I would play 2 beats, and Questlove would play about 100 beats and murder me.
100 million beats.
Yes, that's how that would go.
Yeah, 100 million beats.
Yo,
yeah,
this is so amazing. I appreciate both of y'all time. And I appreciate both of your energies, because I feel like those are the 2 most valuable things that we have, that you can never get back the time or the energy that you spent. And I appreciate your art. And
Thank you.
and for
Appreciate
sharing
it.
the insight with us over here at Genius. I'm fans of you both, and we know that our audience loves you both. And you know, whether they're reading the credits of their favorite album or reading the credits at the end of their favorite show or movie, it's clear who's making the impact. And I really appreciate you for coming on the show and talking about it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Super fun.
To the viewers, thank you for watching. Lovecraft Country is streaming now on HBO and HBO Max. Let us know what your thoughts on the show are in the comments below. You know I'll be in the comments. I don't know if Raphael, I don't know if Laura's gonna be in the YouTube comments with you.
Yeah, I'll be there.
And as always, this is For the Record. Thank you for watching. Peace.